Good day. We're going to get into a little bit in the weeds here today because when we're describing music, there's a very specific vocabulary, and the way we can introduce this is through intervals and inversions. If you are a beginner, I will tell you when you can stop this video because it's gonna get kind of hairy in the weeds, um, and it's just sort of esoteric knowledge you will need to know, maybe if to describe things. It's stuff that exists, but it's probably rarely used. But anyway, the knowledge is good because whenever we use intervals as a way to describe chords, chord symbols, and whatnot, so this will give you sort of just a bit of a primer on those. All right, so intervals are the distance between two notes. That's all it is. Two notes. How far are they apart? All right. So if we're going from the lowest note, so if you're just comparing two notes, you take the lowest note and the one that's above it or the one that's next to it, and you want to see how far it is. All right. So let's look at our just regular old scale degrees. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. And we're just going to use 1. So if I have a C and a C next to each other, it's a unison. So 1 and 1 is a unison. If I have a G and a G, it's a unison. If I have an A and an A, it's a unison. Okay, there are two notes right together. A good example of unison is your tuning note for your strings. I like to tune to an A440. Yes, there may be some octaves involved in there, but generally we try to say that's all unison, one pitch, so we can all agree. All right. So no matter if the two notes are the same, it's a unison. All right. If I take one note and I go up one note, okay? So if I go between 1 and 2, we call that a second. Okay? So if the notes have one space between them, or one go up to the next note, it's a second. So if it's between 3 and 4, that's a second. Between 5 and 6, it's a second. Between 7 and 1, it's a second. We're just describing the distance, not the quality yet. I'm going to get to that in a minute. Okay? Same thing. And you can see a pattern here. Between 1 and 3, if there's count 1, the bottom note is 1, and you go up to 3, that's a third. If I go up from the bottom 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's a fourth. 1 and 5 is the fifth. 1 and 6 is the sixth. 1 and 7 is a seventh. 1 and 8 is an octave. 1 and 9 is a ninth. All right. So this could go on forever. And I guess if you really wanted to be esoteric and to describe things, yeah, you could, but nobody does. All right. As a general rule, we don't go above 13. I don't know why I said 16. Okay. 16 would be your octave. Double octave that. So for your chord symbols, you'll see like a 9. Okay. 9 is the same as the 2. 11 is the same as the 4. 13 is the same as the 6. All right. So when I'm seeing chord symbols, okay, if I see C major 9, it tells the piano player or your guitar player what notes to play. So C, E, G, B, D. C7, sharp 11, so it would be C, E, G, B flat, F sharp. And at C13, you see the pattern. We just keep stacking them, and the number implies also for your chord symbols what does and does not go in there. I'm not going to get into chord voicings right now, but just so you know, when we're describing the distance between the notes, it's very simple. You have unison, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, octave. All right, moving on. Now, if I want to turn them upside down, okay, that's all an inversion is, upside down. So if I have a C and a C together, but then I want to put one of the C's up an octave, it's now an octave. So unisons become octaves. Seconds become sevenths. Okay, so C to D is a second, but if I put the C on top, it's now 7 away instead of 2 away. So C to D is a second, D to C going the other way is a seventh. I'm going to show you this in a minute. Okay, thirds become sixths, fourths become fifths, fifths become fourths. Little side note there, there's a reason why we call them perfect unisons, perfect fourths, perfect fifths. It has to do with tuning, and sort of why we have the 1-4-5 as a sort of a foundation of Western harmony. Moving on. Sixths becomes thirds, sevenths become seconds, octaves become unisons. All right. Now, if we're going to talk about quality, okay, starting from 1, going up, all intervals are either major or perfect. So you have a perfect unison is 1 to 1. Major second is 1 to 2. Major third, 1 to 3. Perfect fourth, 1 to 4. Perfect fifth, 1 and 5. Major sixth, 1 and 6. Major 7, 1 and 7. Perfect octave, 1 and 8. All right. Now, I'm going to turn those down, turn those upside down. So I made this little chart here. So a perfect unison becomes a perfect octave. A major second becomes a minor seventh. A major third becomes a minor sixth. Perfect fourth becomes a perfect fifth. Perfect fifth becomes a perfect fourth. Major sixth becomes a minor third. Major seven, minor second. Perfect octave becomes a perfect unison. Okay, I'm going to visualize these for you in a second here. All right, there are chromatic intervals too. So those are the diatonic sets. So if I play in the key of C, just white keys. Let me go back here. If I play in the white keys, okay, just the white keys, okay, and the C scale, these are going to be my natural diatonic intervals and inversions. Chromatics are when I add flats and sharps to things. Okay, so a diminished interval is a flat 1, flat 4, flat 5, flat octave, or adding a flat to an existing minor interval. All right. Augmented is when I raise the pitch on the unison, so it's a sharp 1, sharp 4, sharp 5, sharp octave, or adding a sharp to an existing major interval. Okay. And where this vocabulary comes in handy when you get into chord reading, so if you're not into chord reading yet, don't worry. Okay, so when I see C diminished, I know that that's going to be a C, E flat, G flat, C diminished chord. The diminished DIM means flat 5. Okay, I don't think I've ever seen a chord symbol where it says C with C flat 5. Because if you had C flat 5, that would be C, E natural with a flat 5. Yeah, so we normally display that with C diminished or C with a circle that's diminished. Augmented chords, you say C major for sharp 5 or C plus, so C, E, G sharp. So I'm taking the fifth note and raising it. Half diminished sevenths. So if I have a C diminished seventh or C minor seventh, flat 5, and there's a spelling there, C, E flat, G flat, B flat, and dominant seventh, sharp 4s, and a bunch of other chord symbols I don't want to get into right now. But you have like a C7 sharp 11, C7 flat 5, and it tells you what notes to play. All right. And why this is important, okay, is because when we're describing the distance between notes, let's bring it back to where we were at the beginning. Okay, you have melodic intervals. So if I go do, re, do, I just sang a interval of a second. Do, mi, do, that's a third. Do, fa, do, fourth. Do, so, do, fifth. Do, la, do, sixth. Do, ti, do, seventh. Do, 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 octave. All right? Those are melodic intervals. So if you're playing a note, if you're playing an instrument that plays only one note at a time, those are the intervals you're worrying about. Harmonic intervals are when you have two notes played at the same time. All right? Okay, you can't sing those well if you can do multiphonic singing, maybe, and I can't do it. So if you're playing a guitar, piano, or two strings at one time, those are two notes played at the same time is a harmonic. So if they're at the same time, they are harmonic intervals. If they're played separate times, they're melodic. All right. When we play three notes at a time, that's a triad, and when we call a special triad is a chord, when we have three notes and the notes are spaced a third apart, and that's getting into chords and stuff. So we're not going there today, but this is why. But when we use the language to describe intervals, is also the language we use to describe chords. All right. So let's get out of here and go over to Finale, where I set up a sheet for you. All right. Okay, so if you are a beginner right now, and you're just saying, I wonder what the intervals are, and this is really all you need to know. Below this, I'm going to get into the weeds of all of them. All right, so I'm going to turn on my thing here. So let's just pretend there are two C's here. So this is a perfect unison. If I put the C on top, it becomes a perfect octave. Notice I am saying these are the diatonic intervals, so I'm just staying in the key of C right now. All right. C to D is a major second. D to C is a minor seventh. So if you flip them around, majors become minors, minors become majors, perfects become perfects, and whatnot. Okay, major third, C to E. E to C is a minor sixth. C to F, perfects because stay perfect, so perfect fourth. If I flip it upside down, perfect fifth. Perfect fifth, remain perfect, perfect fourth. Major sixth becomes a minor third. Major seventh becomes a minor second. And a perfect octave becomes a perfect unison. And I like to say joke is P-U, because, if you've played in groups or worked with beginners and you say, I'll play the same note, it's definitely not a unison. You try to work on it, but that's a whole other story. All right, so these are your diatonic intervals right here. Okay, if you are a beginner and you are satisfied with this, I'm giving you 5 seconds to turn this off, because this is going to go into the super weeds now. Say 5, 4, 3, 2. All right, here you go. Now here are your chromatic intervals. So some of them are going to be the same, but some of them are not. Okay, so if I have a C and a C flat occupying the same place, C natural and C flat occupying the same place. Okay, but you say, well, that's a B natural. No, I'm playing it a C flat because that's the way it's spelled. This would be a diminished unison. Now, have I ever seen that? No. Does it exist? Well, I just made it exist. So there you go. Okay, now, diminished intervals become augmented intervals when you invert them. So if it's a diminished something, and I want to flip it upside down, it's going to become augmented something. Okay, here's my perfect unison, and here's my perfect octave. Both C to C. I have C and C sharp occupying the same space. All right, this would be an augmented unison and a diminished octave. Okay. If I have C to D flat, this is a minor second, and it becomes a major seventh. Here's my major second. It's just C to D natural. D to C is a minor seventh. C to D sharp. The only time you really ever see the augmented intervals is when you're playing harmonic minor scales. Yeah, I think that's the only time you or the composer's just doing that, because it just does a little glitch in your brain, like what the heck is this? But this is an augmented second, and then this becomes a diminished seventh. There we go. Okay. A minor third. So even though these, the augmented second and the minor third, enharmonically sound the same, but as we've had many discussions in the music theory forum, just because they sound the same, that has to do with function. All right. All right. So we have a minor third going to a major sixth. A major third becomes a minor sixth. Is that right? Yeah. Wait a minute. Yes. C major. Yeah, because minor sixth. I was thinking an E flat. Never mind. All right. Now this is horrendous looking. This is being augmented third becomes a diminished sixth. Okay, you don't see that very often, but it exists. And if you say it doesn't exist, well, I just made it exist. All right, a diminished fourth becomes an augmented fifth. A perfect fourth stays perfect. An augmented fourth becomes a diminished fifth. Now its close kissing cousin here is a diminished fifth becomes an augmented fourth. All right. Now remember, enharmonically they sound the same, but the written note tells you the function. Perfect fifth stays perfect. Perfect fourth. I have an augmented fifth becomes a diminished fourth. Remember, this is still the G sharp still keeps going. Minor sixth becomes a major third. A major sixth becomes a minor third. And augmented sixth becomes a diminished third when you flip them upside down. Okay. A minor seventh becomes a major second. A major seventh becomes a minor second. Oh boy, this is scary looking. C to B sharp. This would be an augmented seventh. Becomes a diminished second. Yep. Yes, because they're the same note. And this would be a diminished octave becomes a, oh, we had that at the beginning. C sharp becomes an augmented, what was it? Augmented unison or diminished unison. Well, it depends on how you look at it. Okay. But since I'm going to go with C flat as the figurative note, this would become a diminished octave, or if I flip it upside down, yeah, it's diminished octave, that's correct, or an augmented, sorry. This is just giving me a headache. Why did I do this? Diminished octave becomes an augmented unison. There we go. And perfect octave and becomes a perfect unison. All right. Sorry about that. This is just like brain freeze right here. All right. So, just to review, these are your diatonic intervals native to, whatever key you want to be in. Okay? These are the ones you're going to use most often. Here are your chromatic ones. And while I'm doing this, I got stuck over here because that just looks weird. All right. Anyway, so to sum this up, the intervals are just a way to describe the distance between two notes. That's it. Okay. So, but once you've got that knowledge in your head about how far notes are, then when we get into chords, you'll have a vocabulary to figure out how far things are from one another. So if I say C major, the C major chord, I know it's C, E, G. C minor chord, okay, C, E flat, G. C diminished chord, C, E flat, G flat. All right, so you can learn just by learning your intervals when you get into chord symbols, when you get into harmony, why things are called the way they are. All right. If you found this content interesting or useful, there's a link in the description. I have a composition/theory course which is geared towards beginners. I like to have you writing and creating, and then we can learn how to describe it later. I don't want theory to get into people's way of writing. I've taught for many years, and the best way to start writing and creating music is to just do it. So if you're interested in composition, give me a drop. I also teach saxophone lessons. The studio is open. Link is in the description. Have a nice day.